You might be under the impression that today is Epiphany, and it's not, in spite of us plastering it all over the front of our bulletin. Epiphany is the 6th of January. It is because it is 12 days after Christmas, right? So today is the 12th day of Christmas. So Merry Christmas to you all. Man, how weary we are of it already, right? This sense of Christmas that keeps going. And in Matthew today, we have the wise men. Luke does not have wise men. Luke has shepherds, but no wise men. Matthew has wise men, but no shepherds, and never shall they cross paths. Different times, different places. The story that we have today is perhaps more of a young family at home, as opposed to the idea of someone who is on the run or out of town because the census requires it, like we hear on Christmas Eve. We can picture Jesus perhaps as a toddler, as a small child, not as a baby. We can picture them in a home, their home, where perhaps work is being done. And we hear this story of a journey, right? They come from the east. Now, when we say the east is long. Now, being a Lutheran on the West Coast, we might say, oh, they're from back east, but that would suggest that that was a place we were also from, and that's not what is being talked about here. Many scholars think that the land being referenced there we would call today Iran or Persia, as we might think of it in different times. They're coming from somewhere else. They're on a journey. They're following a star. We know the story, right? We have that image of the three kings, the Magi, as they come. But I want you to think a little more generally about the idea of a journey. There is the sense of a journey that is a fun adventure, and then journeys that should not be an adventure, right? You've perhaps seen on the freeway all of the U-Haul trucks that drive by, and they say on the side of them in big, bold lettering, a moving adventure, which is exactly what you want when you're moving, right? Big adventure. Sometimes the trips don't go the way we want, right? We may know exactly what's supposed to happen. I'm moving from here to there. I'm going to that place. I'm going to attend this event. We know what that's supposed to look like, but sometimes the journey itself gets wonky, right? Sometimes the journey itself does not go as we expect. It's a national park story. There's two of them. Apologies in advance. But we were camping a few years ago at Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park in western Colorado. There's a canyon that is black, if you have not been there. And it's one of the newer national parks. I think it was founded the same year our daughter Inger was born, so 25-ish years old. And in this park, we set up our tent in the campground, and we looked around and realized as we were getting dinner ready that about a dozen of the campsites immediately surrounding us were all occupied by National Park Service rangers, which felt like an excessive amount of supervision, frankly. It made me a little anxious as to what was going on. We didn't have any sense of what the deal was. But we're good National Park Service folks, so we opened up our newspaper that you get when you come into the park to look for the ranger program, because the ranger programs are gold. And the ranger program that night was to look at the night sky. And so we showed up at this with all of our brand new park ranger friends. And the reason that they were all there is that Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park had just been designated a dark sky park. This is an official designation that has to do with how close you are to an urban area, how often planes fly over that place, all kinds of things. How dark does it get? And all of these rangers were there to learn how to do programming for the public at night. And so that's why they were there. They probably had 20 telescopes set up, and it was just fantastic. And for somebody who has spent most of my life around larger cities, the ability to see the Milky Way unaided by a telescope is just staggering, right? Now, in modern times, my people have lost any skill they might have had at looking up at the night sky and figuring out, therefore, how to get to, say, Chicago. The stars are up, I don't know. If you were into sailing, perhaps you would have that. I saw that Conrad was at our early service, but even star reading might have been before his time at the academy. But this idea of finding direction by the stars, right? On the sea, we know the history of it. Looking up and finding the right stars in the right place. But sometimes, perhaps, it's overcast. The stars aren't gone, but they may as well be. And there are all kinds of things in the journey of this life that can stall us in our journeys where we don't see the signs. Some of it is because the signs aren't so clear. When I was about 9 years old, my family was camping at Acadia National Park in Bar Harbor in Maine, and we went on a hike. And I was not on the committee planning the hike at 9 years of age, and so I don't know what my dad's plan was, but we did not. It did not go as planned. We started hiking for what I'm sure for a 9 and 6 year old was supposed to be a couple hours hike, whatever that might have been. So as we got into hour 3 and 4 and 5, as late morning became early afternoon, became mid-afternoon, became late afternoon, we realized that we could not see the trail in front of us. What had happened was people wandered all over the place, and the markings for the trails were for snowmobilers. They were little dots of red paint well up on the side of a tree that you would then see the next one and the next one if you were really good at seeing such things in the wilderness of Maine. And so we struggled to find our way, but eventually got back. But it can be difficult when you can't see all the markers and the guides in your journey, right? You might not end up where you expect. That could be literally. Did I end up literally where I expected? Or has my life journey gone the way I would have imagined? When I was a second-year seminarian in Columbus, Ohio, we were getting ready for internship, and the contextual education office sent us all quizzes and surveys to fill out about all the fabulous places we would love to go and do our internship at. And I went in afterwards and sat down with Skip Cornett, and Skip said, so how fixed are you on this California idea? And I thought, well, I mean, Portland, Seattle, Denver. He said, because we've got this great spot in Youngstown, Ohio. I'm like, that's not even west of here. I had followed all the signs, and yet my destination was going to be somewhere else. Kind of like that academic and professional plan you have when you start college compared to perhaps when you complete college. Or the job and profession you might think you have starting out of college, and then 10, 20 years later becomes a different path. The destination has changed. When we hear about this story, the wise men don't know what they're after. They go, first of all, to find the King of the Jews, and they go, therefore, to the palace. Palace seems like it'd be a place where they'd know about kings, right? They show up at that place and they ask. The palace has no idea. Palace is a little worried because the job of king is already filled, and so they're a little concerned about who this other king might be. And so then they go and find a young boy in a house with a meager and modest family. That was not the journey they were expecting. As we think of the manifestation, the epiphany of Christ among us, we are mindful that wherever our journey goes, we will find Christ, and perhaps not as we expect. The other piece of the journey is the distractions along the way, the clouds that obscure the stars, or the endless little video clips online of people watching their phone only and falling into fountains at the mall, or whatever the case might be. The distractions of this life can throw us off. We can be completely disjointed by what we're about in our life because of all of the shiny things that are put in front of us. This is what will make you famous. This is what will make you important. This is what will make you rich. This is what will make you popular. All of these things, just relentless. My car has this adaptive cruise control, like many of yours perhaps does, but it doesn't work if it's raining really hard. It's hard to see, right? It's hard to see. Sometimes life can be like that. Between schedules of getting everybody to school in the morning, or trying to figure out when vacation time can happen or isn't gonna happen, or whatever the case might be, we can lose track of that wider journey. And because of that, we need to be intentional about taking time in community, time to quiet our hearts and our minds, that we might be able to see the stars, that we might understand that our journey towards God in this life is a journey towards love, and that we will find Christ, but likely not in the way that we expected, and will be a regular reminder to us as we gather to not be distracted by the things that are so close in our windshield, but rather that we should be quieting our hearts so that we might see the path that God has put in front of us, whether we thought it was the best path or whether God has thought it was the best path. Amen.